Hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this important event. Although I'm speaking to you from here in the UK, it's a real privilege to be joining you in celebrating 10 years of Care Opinion in Western Australia. That's 10 years of listening to people who use health and care services, 10 years of staff responding, and 10 years of stories travelling through the system and helping improve care. Now, before I go any further, I want to recognise the many people who have made Care Opinion part of the health system in Western Australia. To my colleagues in the Care Opinion team in Australia, and to everyone across health services, consumer organisations, and the wider community who have supported this work over the past decade, thank you. What you're celebrating today reflects 10 years of commitment to listening and learning from the voices of patients, families and carers. Across the UK, across Australia, and increasingly across other countries like Canada and Ireland, Care Opinion has grown because it provides a simple but powerful idea. It allows people to share their experience of care in their own words, and it allows organisations and staff to respond openly. I often describe Care Opinion in a very practical way. Technology helps people speak, but people help healthcare listen. And when that happens well, stories begin to travel through organisations and help care improve. Since our founding just over 20 years ago, we've seen hundreds of thousands of stories shared through Care Opinion here in the UK about our National Health Service and other health and care organisations. Some celebrate extraordinary care, others highlight problems or frustrations, and many do both. But what they all do is show us something that we cannot see through dashboards or performance indicators. They show us what care actually felt like. One colleague in the UK reflected on this beautifully when they talked about their work in radiology. They said that in departments where interactions are brief and fast-paced, Care Opinion has opened a valuable window into the patient journey, allowing us to celebrate what we do well and identify where we can do better. Now that matters because healthcare is not only about treatments and outcomes, it's about relationships, trust, dignity and compassion. When organisations first encounter Care Opinion, one concern often comes up. People sometimes say, well, because the stories are anonymous, we can't do anything with them. But that misses the point. Care Opinion is not primarily about investigating individual cases. Health systems already have processes for that. Its purpose is to help organisations listen, learn, and respond to the experiences people are sharing. When a story is shared, the most important question is not, can we identify the patient? The most important question is, what is this story telling us? And what does it reveal about communication, compassion, or the experience of navigating services? When organisations respond thoughtfully to stories, something powerful happens. Patients, families, and carers feel heard. Staff see the impact of their work through the eyes of the people they care for. And leaders gain insight into culture and experience that traditional data simply cannot provide. Across the NHS in the UK and health and care services here, we've seen Care Opinion stories used in many ways. Teams read stories together and reflect on what they can learn. Boards use them to ground discussions about quality and real experiences. Positive feedback is shared with staff to support morale and well-being. And Care Opinion stories are used widely to improve, design and redesign services based on what matters to patients. One senior healthcare official once said to me that Care Opinion had changed the way they thought about quality. The data tells us what's happening. The stories tell us what it feels like. Stories also lead directly to improvement. And one member of staff recently described it like this. Care Opinion gives us a unique opportunity not just to listen, but to act. Whether it's celebrating what's going well or learning from what could be improved, every story is a chance to grow and continue delivering person-centred care. To use the Scottish National Health Service as an example, Over the past year, we have seen services make a wide range of changes because of stories shared through Care Opinion. In one service, patients shared how difficult it was to understand appointment letters. There was too much jargon and too much uncertainty about what would happen next. The team worked with patients to redesign the letters so they were clearer and easier to follow. In another example, people described how stressful it could be waiting for care without knowing what was happening. That feedback led the teams to improve how they communicate while people were waiting. They provided clearer information and more regular updates. And in another service, stories from patients and families highlighted how uncertain people can feel when leaving hospital. Staff responded by improving how discharge information is shared so patients feel more confident about what is happening next. None of these changes are large on their own, but they come directly from what people experienced. Across hundreds or thousands of stories, those small improvements begin to add up to something much bigger. A health system that continually learns from the people it serves. Care Opinion also supports staff in a very human way. Healthcare professionals work incredibly hard, yet too often they only hear about problems. Care Opinion allows positive stories of care to travel. One healthcare staff member in Scotland described it in a way that I'll never forget. They said, "One of my favourite parts of using Care Opinion is that little ping in my inbox when a new story arrives. It reminds me that someone has taken the time to share their experience. Every story is unique, teaches us something different, and truly matters." These stories remind staff why they chose healthcare in the first place. And in some organisations, teams have even created small traditions around this. One hospital gives a mug to staff who are named positively in Care Opinion stories more than 5 times. It sounds small, but those mugs became something people were incredibly proud of. We've seen other organisations create certificates, badges, and finding other ways to celebrate colleagues through blogs and newsletters. Because they represent the difference those staff made to patients, families and carers. When I visited Western Australia back in November, one thing that really struck me was the seriousness with which people were approaching this work and the stories they were responding to. Across Western Australia, we're seeing health services do exactly that and continue to deepen and strengthen the work. Stories are being read, staff are responding thoughtfully, and learning is being shared. Over the past 10 years, the teams here in Western Australia have helped create the foundations for that culture. Thousands of stories have been shared by patients, families and carers, and thousands of responses have been written by staff who took the time to listen and reply. Every story represents a moment of care. Taken individually, they are small windows into healthcare. Together, they create a living picture of care across the system. Looking ahead, the question is not simply how many stories are shared. The real question is how deeply those stories are used. In many places in the UK, the next phase of the Care Opinion journey will be about embedding stories more deeply into organisations, ensuring they reach frontline teams, encouraging responses from those who provide care, and bringing narrative feedback together with other forms of data. In other words, moving from collecting stories to learning from stories at scale. Western Australia is already well on that journey. The partnerships between health services, the Department of Health, the Health Consumers Council and Care Opinion are incredibly important because they make narrative feedback part of how healthcare systems listen. Western Australia is not alone in this approach. In the UK, we've seen something similar develop in Scotland and in Northern Ireland, where Care Opinion is now used across the whole health system. In both places, the platform has become part of the infrastructure of listening. Stories are shared across the entire system. Staff respond openly. Learning is shared across organisations. Because of that, Scotland and Northern Ireland have become points of inspiration for the rest of the UK. They show us that listening to every story is not something that happens in one service. It can happen at scale across an entire health system. And what's exciting is that is what Western Australia is doing. And I'm happy to say you're joining this group with Scotland and Northern Ireland. In many ways, Western Australia is definitely sitting alongside both those countries as beacons of good practice, demonstrating what it looks like when health systems commit to listening openly and learning from the experiences of people they serve. As you celebrate 10 years of Care Opinion in Western Australia today, I hope this is a moment and an opportunity to think about what the next 10 years looks like. How might staff engage even more deeply with patient voices? How might stories support workforce culture and well-being? How might narrative feedback sit alongside other intelligence to shape better care? Because in the end, that's what care is really about. Not technology, not platforms, but people. People sharing their experiences, people responding with compassion, and healthcare systems learning, story by story, how to do better. 10 years ago, Western Australia began a journey built on a simple idea that people's stories matter. Today, Western Australia stands alongside Scotland and Northern Ireland as a place showing what it looks like when a health system truly commits to listening. And I have no doubt that the work that you're doing will continue to inspire others across Australia, across the UK, and internationally. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and congratulations again on 10 years of listening, learning, and improving care through the power of people's stories.